Thank you for that introduction and for this opportunity to share with you the areas of my research as it pertains to new uses for domestic peanuts and opportunities for market expansion. Next slide, please. Let's see. The peanut is a natural hybrid of two Arachis wild species originating in current Bolivia some 10,000 years ago. During the 16th and 17th century, the Spanish transported peanuts via their trade routes to Spanish and Portuguese territories, particularly the Americas, China, India, and West Africa. Peanuts, also known as groundnuts, were introduced to North America, particularly the U.S. South, through West Africa via the transatlantic slave trade, and later were termed goober in the U.S. South. That name originated from the African Bantu name of Nguba. In the early 1800s, peanuts were cultivated by communities of enslaved persons and utilized for their valuable source of energy and dietary protein for food and for feed for their livestock in the U.S. South. Peanuts prevented the slaves from starving. They did not have the sources of soybean meal to feed their livestock, but utilized peanuts. Dr. George Washington Carver encouraged and educated the newly emancipated slave and new sharecropper to cultivate peanuts to rectify the widespread nutrient depletion and erosion in the southern soils caused by a monoculture of cotton. Peanuts, being a nitrogen-fixing legume, return nutrients to the soil as a part of a crop rotation that would later boost the yield of future cotton plantings. However, during the U.S. Civil War, peanuts grew in popularity as a readily available food source for rations for starving soldiers. As well, peanut oil was replaced embargoed northern whale oil as a machinery lubricant. After the Civil War, the use of peanut spread, later become known as peanut butter, expanded throughout the U.S., and the production of peanuts was popularized by Dr. George Washington Carver as a pioneering agricultural scientist. Dr. George Washington Carver came up with over 300 uses for peanuts. A lot of them were identified in his bulletins as uses in food recipes, for soups, for cookies, peanut milk, coffee, mayonnaise. Moreover, Dr. George Washington Carver had bulletins on the uses of peanuts in animal feed. He demonstrated that peanut hearts were good for egg-laying hens. He also demonstrated that the peanut hull could be made into meal and fed to livestock. He also demonstrated that hogs fed a diet of peanuts and corn produced premium quality hams and bacon. That particular point comes back home, brings it all back home to me, because growing up in North Carolina, I grew up in Johnston County, and I remember my grandparents letting out the hogs in the fall. They let the hogs out in the peanut fields because they grew peanuts for us to eat and for the livestock to have. And we had a wonderful Christmas ham behind these hogs eating these peanuts. It was awfully good. Moreover, Dr. George Washington Carver also identified uses of peanuts, peanut oil for cosmetics, shaving cream, scalp pomade, a number of things. Also for the production of paints, wood stains, dyes for leather and cloth using the peanut oil, paper, the peanut skin fibers, the white fiber inside of the hull was utilized to make paper. He also demonstrated that peanuts and peanut hulls could be used to make fuel briquettes. They could be used to charcoal from the shells, axle grease, and rubber. His inventiveness led peanuts to becoming one of the 6 most produced crops in the U.S. by the 1940s. Dr. George Washington Carver raised the peanut from a lowly legume produced within the enslaved community to a valuable cash crop that helps save the South's farming economy. Today, the U.S. domestically produces some almost 6 billion pounds of peanuts annually from approximately 1.5 million acres in the U.S., with Georgia leading the production in the country. Today, the current uses of peanuts are predominantly for food. All of those ideas of animal feed utilization were left by the wayside centuries or decades ago, such that 60% of peanuts are used for peanut butter, and about 15% of the annual crop is crushed for oil, with the remaining byproducts of peanut meal used in animal feed, peanut flour used as an alternative to regular flour in cooking preparation, and 25% of it is used as in-shell snacks, candy, and confections. Me working for the USDA, our mission with this under the umbrella of the 306 National Program, in which our mission is to enhance the marketability of agricultural products in the country, to increase the availability of healthful foods, and to develop value-added food and non-food products. Moreover, my unit in which I work for, in the Food Science and Market Quality and Handling Unit, we focus predominantly on peanuts. Measure and maintain, enhance post-harvest product quality in our unit, to focus on harvest and process agricultural materials of peanuts and peanut byproducts, and lastly, to create new value-added products from peanuts and peanut byproducts. Hence, my research has aimed to identify new uses for peanuts as a value-added food and non-food product, and to enhance the availability of foods for humans, and to create new value-added products. To meet many of these objectives within my research program, I have led a program that causes the intersection of peanuts and poultry. In the U.S. Southeast, it predominates in the production of peanuts and poultry. However, the need for poultry feed rations far exceeds the ability to produce these ingredients needed for poultry production regionally. Thus, the use of peanuts in poultry feed ingredients may serve to enhance the nutritional quality of the chicken breast that's produced, as well as the eggs, while also supporting greater sustainable community-focused agriculture. Over the last 8 years in which I've been with the unit, I've conducted several layer hen high-oleic feeding trials, 3 broiler high-oleic feeding trials, and as of recently, 2 fish high-oleic feeding trials. I want to share with you some of these results of the highlights from some of these studies. The first series of studies that we conducted the question was, can we replace soybean meal in the diets of layers? We wanted to focus on layers because right now eggs are a huge concern for a number of people who are health conscious, and I wanted to see if we could improve the nutritional value of enrichment of these eggs. So the first study we did was a really small study in which we replaced the diets with either, I put some glasses on so I could see. We replaced the diets, we either fed a conventional control diet of soybean meal and corn, or we replaced soybean meal with 20% unbleached high-oleic peanuts and corn in the diet. This was a very small study. We did it directly within our building there at Scott Hall, and what we determined was that average weekly egg produce was not significantly impacted between the high-oleic peanut diet and the conventional control. Neither was body weights. However, in this very first study, we were concerned because you can see a higher feed conversion ratio for those that were fed the high-oleic peanut diet, and the higher the number you have, that means that there's adverse impact to the feed conversion ratio. So that was significantly different between the treatment groups. So the first question was answered, can we do it? The answer was yes. The second series of studies, can we do it better? So in the second series of studies, we conducted these studies out at the farm to more parallel commercial standards in animal husbandry. We had 100 hens per treatment group. We had 3 treatment groups because some folks said, well, you need to compare oleic acid oil being supplemented or spiked to a controlled diet. You may get the great effects you see just with giving oleic oil to the diets. Well, in this study, we saw that there were no adverse effects on any of the production parameters in this study. We increased the power of the test. There was no differences in body weights, total egg produced, egg weights, or the feed conversion factor in that study. Then we did another set of studies in which we wanted to know, now we know that we could replace soybean meal in the diet without adversely impacting layer performance or egg quality. Can we supplement the diets with peanuts instead of replacing soybean meal? So we conducted 2 series of studies in which the first set, we had a conventional diet, layer diet, soybean meal and corn, and then we had a diet in which we supplemented this soybean meal and corn diet with 8% unblanched high-oleic peanuts, and then we went a step further and we wanted to see if we could use this basal diet and supplement it with 4% whole in shell high-oleic peanuts in the diet of layers. And what we saw, there was no significant difference in body weights after 6 weeks. Interestingly enough, you see that when you supplement the diets with 8% high-oleic peanuts, you have increased number of eggs produced in those hens relative to the conventional groups. And you also see that egg weights are the same, and you see that while feed conversion factor was slightly adversely impacted, it was still within industry acceptable standards. We conducted another study in which we wanted to see, can we supplement the diets with peanuts and what are the effects? So we had 3 treatments here, one of them being sweet potato. Can we supplement the diets with 4% sweet potato? North Carolina is the #1 producer of sweet potatoes in the country. We have tons of sweet potato byproducts, tubers that can't be quality graded such that they can be used for human food. What do we do with them? Can we put them in layer feed, and how do that type of diet stack up against a high-oleic peanut diet? Okay, so what we saw in this study, again, you see that hens that were supplemented with unblanched high-oleic peanut diets to the basal diet produced more eggs relative to the other treatment groups. You see there was no difference in egg weights, you see there was no difference in body weights, and there's no difference in feed conversion factor after 6 weeks of feeding. I picked this picture at the top here so you can see the observable difference in egg yolk color when you include or when you replace high-oleic peanuts to soybean meals in the diet. With comparison of these 2 treatment groups, a conventional or 20% high-oleic replacement diet, you see that here there was no significant difference and no adverse impact to Hall unit, which is a egg quality parameter, albumin height, which is also another egg quality parameter. What was very interesting to us in this study was that the yolk color score was 2-fold increased when you have the peanuts in the diet, high-oleic peanuts in the diet. And then you see that there is a significant increase in beta-carotene levels. Normally, beta-carotene is something that you only get in a plant source. It's a provitamin A, and normally you don't see it in eggs, you don't see it in other animal protein sources. So this was a significant surprise and very interesting to us in this very first series of studies. This is other impact that we saw is that after 10 weeks of feeding the unblanched high-oleic peanut diet as a replacement to soybean meal, we saw that the egg weights were slightly reduced. However, they were still USDA grade A eggs and large size eggs, but the mass was slightly reduced in that treatment group. We also we did the study again where we have those same 2 treatment groups where we also compared against an oleic acid spiked basal diet, and you see that there was no significant difference in the egg quality and shell force, vitelline membrane strength, or Hall unit in the eggs that were produced. In this series of studies, what we found very, very interesting was that also when you include a 20% high-oleic peanut diet as a replacement to soybean meal, there's a significant increase in yolk color score, as you can see here in this middle panel, relative to the conventional egg. That was highly significant. And when we wanted in this study to also look at the beta-carotene levels. How quickly does that occur after feeding the diet? We saw that after 1 week of feeding this unblanched high-oleic peanut diet as a replacement to soybean meal, you had spikes in beta-carotene levels that lasted throughout the entire study up to 8 weeks. We also wanted to take and look at the egg quality of eggs produced from hens fed a supplemented diet, not a replacement, but a supplemented diet of either high oleic peanuts and whole end shell, and you see that there was no significant difference in any of these egg quality parameters. Egg yolk color was not impacted when you have it as a supplement. However, we did see that there was enrichment of beta carotene in the eggs produced from hens fed a 4% whole end shell peanut diet. We went back to some of Dr. Petit's old work that he did, in which he showed that certain crops of peanuts have higher levels of beta carotene. Beta carotene is utilized with the seedling being developed as protection, an antioxidant to this developing germplasm, the seed. And so as a consequence, all of that is transferred from the seed, from the peanut, to the egg in the diet, from the diet. So in this second series of studies, we compare supplementation with the high oleic peanut, sweet potato to the conventional, and what we saw is that, of course, as we expected, that the yolk color here would, in the sweet potato treatment group, would be significantly greater than those that were the high oleic peanut. Interestingly enough, it looks like the yolk color was slightly less in the peanut supplemented group relative to the controls in that particular treatment. That particular study. Our last focus was to really look at the lipids, because a lot of people are concerned about eating eggs because the cholesterol is pretty high for a lot of people. And so we want to know, can we change the lipid profile of the egg and make the consumer more interested by using high oleic peanuts? The first series of studies, of course, was a small study that we did. And what we found is that when you feed high oleic peanuts, it transfers directly from the lipid, the great lipid profile transfers directly from the peanut to the egg. And what you see here is you have a reduction in these saturated fats, palmitic acid, stearic acid, significantly, highly significant reduction, and you have a significantly enhanced increase in the oleic acid as a monounsaturated fat relative to the controls. In this particular study, we had a small sample size, and you see there was a slight increase of total cholesterol in this first study. In the second study, you see that the total cholesterol was the same between all the treatments. Again, this was 48 hens per treatment group. This was 100 hens per treatment group. And you see here that with the larger number of eggs, I think we had about 200 eggs per treatment, you saw that there was no statistical difference in the total cholesterol. You see here that with supplementing the diets, either with 8% unblanched high oleic peanut or the 4% whole end shell unblanched high oleic peanut, the only saturated fat that was reduced was stearic acid, and there was a slight bump and increase in oleic acid, but not much to be significant in this particular study. And then we also looked at the saturated fatty acid content of the 3 comparative treatments with high oleic peanut supplementation and the sweet potato supplementation, and you see that the only difference is between those 2 treatment groups of the peanuts and the sweet potato, whereas the saturated fat levels between the high oleic peanut supplemented and the controls were similar. We then had the question from the poultry industry that reached back to us and wanted to know, how does this work in broilers? Broilers are a little bit more difficult, and so instead of having a complete replacement of soybean meal in the diet, we aim to conduct a diet in which we supplemented the basal broiler diet with 10% unblanched high oleic peanut. As you can see, because these have common superscripts, that they are statistically the same. Body weights were not impacted significantly between the control and the high oleic peanut group. However, numerically they were slightly less. The low oleic oil did not adversely impact the body weights. The feed conversion factor was slightly adversely impacted, however, still within industry standards. And what was very observable is that we were doing the cut-ups, and there was people in the poultry industry that were helping me do this, and they were cutting them up and throw them in the tank, the cold water tank, chill tank. And somebody said, "Oh man, boy, is that a pretty color on these hens, these birds, these broilers." And I said, "Huh?" So I walk over and I look, and sure enough, you could walk from tank to tank and see what broilers were of the peanut-fed treatment groups or the oleic acid-fed treatment groups, and it was just that simply to just, that was that observable. So I pulled them out of the tank and put them in a basket and put a piece of tape on it and took a picture that day. What was, because of these reductions in, the slight reduction in the body weights here, while they were not significant, it did translate to a reduced level of cut-up components of heart carcass weight was reduced, breast major, breast minor, and frame of the absolute values of the weights. However, when you look at the percentage of percent breast yield, leg quarter, percent leg yield, skin, fat, and percent frame, there was no significant difference. What was very interesting is that there was a significant difference in impact on the reduction of saturated fats found in chicken breasts. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly dieting. And I do not like chicken breast. I eat it because it's low in saturated fat. However, if I could eat a chicken breast that was low in saturated fat and enriched with monounsaturated fatty acids that's heart healthy, that would be a win-win for me. So that is a part of what we saw in this particular study and a couple of the other studies that we did. We also saw that the breast meat was also reflective of the diets of the high oleic peanut. High oleic peanuts are high in oleic acid and low in linoleic acid, which is omega-6 fatty acid. And you see that that is reflected directly in the meat. So in overall, what is this? What does this mean? When you replace the diet with unbleached high oleic peanuts, when you replace soybean meal with unbleached high oleic peanuts, what do you get? You get increased yolk color, increased beta carotene enrichment, enriched oleic acid. You have reduced saturated fatty acid content, palmitic and stearic. And you have, while all the eggs were USDA grade A, large eggs, you did have slightly reduced egg weights. When you supplement the diets with high oleic peanuts, what you get? You get increased egg production. You get increased beta carotene levels when you give whole and shell peanuts. You increase the oleic acid and you reduce one of the saturated fats, which was stearic acid only. What does this mean? So I sat with some of the ag economists at NC State, and these are some values they helped me with. If this type of feeding regimen was only adopted by just one layer production, layer hen production in the state of North Carolina, which is Hyde County, has 3.5 million layers. And if we included just 5% inclusion of high oleic peanuts in the diet, that is the level at which we have seen an effect currently in our current study, you would utilize approximately 8,000 tons of peanuts per year just for that facility. The ag economist said that the peanut price would be approximately $625 a ton, meaning $425 per ton in shell farmer price and a $200 per ton to shell, leading to about approximately $5 million in sales annually just with use at Hyde County. If we look at it for the state of North Carolina, state of North Carolina has 9 million layers, and at 5% inclusion, that would utilize 20,000 tons of peanuts per year, bringing in a total of approximately $13 million of sales. And then domestically, we look at that number. In 2002, there was 305 million layers in the U.S. And if we included that high oleic peanuts or peanuts in general at 5% inclusion in the layer diets, that would utilize 700,000 tons of peanuts annually in the U.S. at a price of $437 million. How could this benefit the peanut industry? In 2021, in the 2021 growing season, the U.S. peanut crop exceeded consumption, resulting in a 1.18 million tons of carryover in 2022. The utilization, just a small inclusion level, would help the peanut industry and provide economic opportunities, also while utilizing this annual oversupply of peanuts. Utilizing this oversupply would then drive the price of these carryover stocks such that there would be additional economic profits. Market expansion of domestic peanuts beyond just the utilization of food would be beneficial to the peanut industry. What are the benefits to the poultry industry? Improved animal health we didn't see any mortalities in any of these birds that were fed these peanut diets. They're getting high quality protein and a great deal of dietary energy. You have enrichment. Now you've got premium quality eggs that are enriched, as well as premium quality poultry meat. Also, a benefit to the poultry industry is that this finished feed that contains high oleic peanuts has a longer shelf life. We don't have to refrigerate it. It stays out at the farm a long time and never goes rancid. The potential benefits to the consumer is an improved nutritional quality of the eggs and meat with enrichment with unsaturated fats, reduced saturated fats, as well as potential enrichment for beta carotene. Future directions, what we aim to do currently, we have been in collaboration with Dr. Michael Best, who is Director of Executive Farm Management at NC State and Assistant Professor in Agricultural Economics. We're doing an economic analysis of these studies. We also aim to do additional dose response studies in which we use normal oleic, conventional peanuts in a lot of these studies, along with additional high oleic peanut feeding trials. And we also aim to complete a data analysis of a high oleic peanut fish feeding trial. We just completed a fish feeding trial in which they said you can't feed peanuts to fish. Well, you can. You just need an extruder to make the fish feed float. They've been using soybean in fish diets for many, many years. And if soybeans can be used in the diets of aquaculture, so can peanuts. I was recently contacted by the International Office at NC State. The Malawian government is very interested in utilizing peanuts in fish diets there. Malawi wants to become self-sustainable, and 80% of the African Malawian diet is their animal protein is fish. They are overfishing a lot of their natural resources, and they want to go into fish farming, but they don't have soybean meal, and they can't afford soybean meal, but they can produce peanuts. So they're looking for ways globally to use peanuts and other types of farming needs and agriculture needs to meet the food needs of their citizens. So in wrapping up, I want to say thank you to those that donated to a lot of my projects, which is Premium Peanut, Birdsong, Mr. Hal Burns at Jimbo's Jumbos, whom else? I wanted funding from the Food Science and Market Quality and Handling Research Unit, the North Carolina Peanut Growers, ARS for numerous research awards and innovation grants, and the Georgia Peanut Commission. And I want to thank all of you for this opportunity for me to share this work with you today.